When Ozempic became so popular so fast, it upended the monetary policy of an entire country. Denmark's central bank had to change course because of it. Yet that's the least strange thing about its economics. This is a drug where the longer you pay to stay on it, the more money your government saves. Stop taking it, and it actually costs taxpayers more. That's backwards from how every other expensive drug works. And the company behind it grew so large, it undercut the profits of a dozen industries that have nothing to do with medicine. Ozempic is far from just an interesting healthcare story anymore. With sales of Ozempic and competing medication expected to reach $90 billion this year, the drug is rewriting the rules of economics in ways we've never seen. Most people know Ozempic as a weight loss drug, something a celebrity takes, or a doctor mentioned. But that framing misses almost everything interesting about what's actually happening here. Ozempic is just the brand name. The drug inside it is semaglutide, a GLP-1 receptor agonist that mimics a hormone your gut releases after eating to signal fullness. It was approved in 2017 to treat type 2 diabetes. Then researchers noticed that patients taking it were losing significant amounts of weight. The same compound, rebranded as Wegovy for obesity, was approved in 2021. The company behind that molecule is Novo Nordisk, a Danish pharmaceutical company. For a stretch in 2024, it was the most valuable company in all of Europe, hitting a market cap of $600 billion, worth more than the $450 billion annual GDP of its own home country. One company being worth more than an entire nation produces in a year creates a real imbalance with real consequences. As a result, Denmark's central bank was forced to keep interest rates lower than it otherwise would have. Not because of a recession or some geopolitical crisis, but because of the tidal wave of foreign money flooding into the country, chasing one company's rising stock. Lower interest rates risk higher inflation and general economic overheating, as the cost of goods and services can rise faster than wages can keep up. A new situation for a country known for its stable economy. Economists have a name for this now: the pharmastate effect. Similar to oil's dominant role in a petrostate, a single pharmaceutical corporation gets so dominant that it bends an entire country's monetary policy around its own fortunes. But in 2025, Novo Nordisk's stock fell roughly 40% as competition intensified. Denmark's GDP growth forecast got slashed almost overnight. That's the risk of a national economy being tied to the performance of one company. And that risk isn't shrinking. By 2025, the global GLP-1 market was worth roughly $65 billion, up $25 billion from the previous year. Some analysts project a market value of about $350 billion by 2032, bigger than the entire GDP of Greece or New Zealand, built almost entirely on a handful of drugs. But the drug's pricing structure is where the economics take a strange turn. Ozempic runs about $1,000 a month without insurance in the US. That's over $12,000 a year. For life. For one patient. In France or Germany, the same drug, often made in the same factories, costs a fraction of that. The molecule is identical. The only real difference is whether a government negotiated the price. The US has no centralized negotiation mechanism the way most wealthy countries do, and that single fact is why America pays 4 to 5 times more than almost anywhere else on Earth, while capturing over 75% of the entire industry's global revenue. America is both the biggest customer and the leading subsidizer of cheap access for the rest of the world. That balancing act is already starting to crack. Net prices in the US have fallen from roughly $13,000 a year in 2022 to around $8,000 to $9,000 today. For now, demand still outpaces supply, which is exactly why manufacturers have been able to hold prices high in the first place. But supply is catching up, competition is arriving, and the days of pricing this inelastic are numbered. In 2023, about 5 million Americans were on a GLP-1 drug. By 2025, that number had doubled to 10 million, about 12% of U.S. adults. Projections put it at 25 to 30 million by 2030. The early users were wealthy and paying out of pocket. That's changing fast, and the biggest reason is Medicare. Once these drugs showed they could cut major cardiovascular events like heart attacks and strokes by 20%, the door opened for Medicare to start covering them. Millions of seniors who never had access now do. And once a drug reaches Medicare scale, it's no longer a prescription. It becomes a line item in a national budget. What makes this particular drug unique, however, is the relationship between price and time. These drugs are costly because patients regain the weight if they stop, which makes the treatment essentially lifelong. On paper, that sounds like an open-ended nightmare for the budget-conscious among us. But in reality, a more nuanced story emerges. Obesity drives diabetes, heart disease, kidney failure, and more. Conditions that cost governments and patients far more to treat than the drug itself. When researchers actually run the long-term numbers, lifelong treatment comes out ahead of short-term treatment because the savings from diseases that never happen outweigh the cost of staying on the drug forever. Some economists are now arguing this shouldn't even be classified as healthcare spending. It should be classified the same way as a school or a road, an investment, not an expense, because a healthier population works longer, earns more, and costs the system less for decades. If that argument wins, it changes how virtually every government on Earth will budget for this drug. And the clinical case keeps growing. Reduced sleep apnea, early signals against Alzheimer's, real protection for the kidneys. Every new approved use is a new insurance argument and a new wave of eligible patients, expanding a market that already looked enormous. The growing size of that market is having massive knock-on effects on other parts of the economy. When 10 million Americans feel less hungry, the shockwaves hit industries that have nothing to do with pharmaceuticals. Food and beverage is the first casualty. GLP-1 users buy less high-fat, high-sugar, and alcoholic products, and researchers found users spending noticeably less on snacks and alcohol at the grocery store. Major food companies are already reformulating around protein. Retail is shifting too. Demand for extra small and small women's clothing rose, while large and extra large fell. And formal wear sales jumped 80% in early 2025 as a newly mobile population started dressing differently. And the diet industry? It didn't just take a hit, it lost its entire premise. Weight Watchers, a company that built a business empire helping people struggling to lose weight on their own, has had to incorporate clinics prescribing GLP-1s directly into its model just to survive. It couldn't beat the drug, so it became a delivery system for it. Then, there's the strangest angle of all: addiction. GLP-1 receptors sit not just in the gut, but in the reward circuits of the brain. Patients report fewer alcohol cravings, less compulsive eating, and fewer urges to smoke or gamble. The research is still early, but alcohol companies, tobacco firms, and casino operators are watching closely. When a pill can quiet a craving directly, entire industries built on the idea that cravings can't be controlled have a financial problem they've never faced before. For a few years, Novo Nordisk owned this market alone. Then Eli Lilly created Mounjaro and Zepbound, which beat Wegovy head-to-head on weight loss. The shift was fast. By early 2026, Lilly held roughly 60% of the GLP-1 market to Novo's 40%. Novo's stock had already fallen by 40% in 2025, squeezed by pricing pressure, telehealth competitors, and a CEO change. Combined Ozempic and Wegovy sales still landed around $32 billion, but the trajectory had flipped. That fight is reshaping where research money goes industry-wide. Billions once aimed at behavioral and lifestyle studies are now pouring into the next chemical breakthrough, especially pills that could replace the injection entirely, cutting production costs and removing needle aversion as a barrier. Novo's oral version of Wegovy, released in early 2026, pulled in 18,000 prescriptions in its second week alone, more than double Lilly's injectable in the same window. Lilly's own pill is expected sometime this year. A second wave of money is chasing drugs that preserve muscle during rapid weight loss, since fast fat loss often burns lean muscle right along with it, leaving patients lighter but weaker. Solve that problem, and you remove one of the biggest medical objections to the entire drug class. Two companies racing for a $200 billion market with competing pills means falling prices, rising volume, and a margin structure that won't look anything like it does today. And looming over all of it, the patent clock. Semaglutide is already losing exclusivity in Canada, Brazil, and China this year. Once generics arrive, the price floor collapses because the actual manufacturing cost was always a fraction of the list price. The price was never about production. It was about exclusivity. The US holds out a few more years, but the direction is set. Within a decade, this becomes a high-volume, low-margin commodity, the pharmaceutical equivalent of statins. A cheap, globally available generic version of this drug could end up being one of the most significant public health interventions in modern history. So, pull back and look at the whole picture. A diabetes drug that accidentally triggered a weight loss revolution. Bent the monetary policy of a typically stable European nation. Gutted food companies, diet brands, and retail forecasts. Possibly undermining the economics of addiction itself. Generating real returns for government health budgets. And now racing toward a future where it becomes a cheap generic available to everyone. That's not one economic story. That's half a dozen, all happening at once, inside a single molecule. Denmark was the first country to have its economic policy warped by a single drug company. It probably won't be the last. The next time a company grows this big, this fast, the real question won't be whether it can move a national economy. It'll be which country harnesses the benefits and avoids the pitfalls first.